Hey, what is up, everybody? I've been getting to you guys later and later. Been a crazy last couple weeks. Hopefully, after this week, things won't be as fucked up as they have been. But I have an interesting topic that I wanted to share with you guys. It has to do with fame. Now, when I've talked about my background in the music industry, the good thing is I get to stay in the background. Or I got to stay in the background. I didn't have to put myself out there. I emceed a couple shows. The very first show, actually, the very first record label I worked for here in Colorado, it was manned by one of the biggest talents in the industry's protege. And you would think, okay, this dude has been handed $1 million on a fucking platinum platter. How the hell are you gonna mess this up? Well, he found a way to. But prior to us knowing that he was gonna mess everything up, I had to set up this live event. Think of 8 Mile, except not underground. It was with one of the radio stations. There's 2 radio stations out here in Denver that are at the time, 2 radio stations that were popular for playing hip hop and R&B. Back in the days was KS 107.5 and 93.3. We got a hold of 93.3, which was the smaller of the 2. KS 107.5 had a bigger market. But, we figure, okay, let's target, the smaller of the 2 since they have a smaller market. We're up and coming. They did a news story about us, 9 News, about, creating this, entertainment hub here in Colorado since Colorado taxes the living shit out of movies and pretty much anything entertainment industry. That's why you see a lot of movies being made in Atlanta, a lot of music videos being made in Atlanta. They don't tax the living shit out of them like they do here. But that was the ultimate goal. So here, as an intern, I put together a live feed from one of the bigger nightclubs at the time. And it was an 18 and over nightclub. And here were my fuck ups. Here were my shortfallings. Was one, in the promo that we hired, the guy to do the voiceover for the commercial, it should have been an 18 and over. But for some reason, I don't know why I didn't think it, put 21 and over. And there was a crowd around the block for 18 and over and 18, year olds. I was like, shit. And of course the owner gets pissed at me because he's like, why didn't you guys think of this? And I'm like, dude, this is my first time doing this. Well, you look a little young to be doing this. I'm like, yeah, I am a little young to be doing this, but this is my first time. This is my first go around. You learn from your fuck ups. And so he begrudgingly opened up, the second part of his nightclub and wristband the 18-year-olds, and then we had a packed house. That night we had Father MC there, who I've talked about before. He was signed to Uptown Records at the same time that Puff Daddy was an A&R director, an A&R rep, who then later on went on and kind of behind the back of the owner of A&R and all that, was able to establish Bad Boy with Biggie, with some other artists. So that was the same thing I was. I was an A&R rep. I always had said, shit, I'll be younger than Puff Daddy was when he fucking, established Bad Boy. That was always like my goal, to be younger than him when he did it. I was starting off at 20, 21 years old, pretty much not even old enough to go to these nightclubs, let alone establishing, one of, a radio station live feed, a rap battle. And what it wasn't 2, opposing people going at it and, crowd this one, crowd that one. No, they were acts that would go up on stage. And we had about maybe 24 acts. The news feed was about maybe 4 hours long. And yeah, we had some amazing talent come up. And I know Father MC at the time talked shit about Puff Daddy, saying, I made you mother effer, and you ain't shit, this and that. And he had a point. Father MC went along with, Sean Combs and, got him the flow to, eventually get, Biggie and all them. And he's a good businessman. I mean, you cannot deny that. Look at where he's brought, Bad Boy and whatever, Bad Boy isn't doing now. He's still raking in the cash by, either podcasts or his, satellite streaming radio shows. And still the artists that he brings up. So, I cannot take that away from him. I don't have anything against him. I just didn't like the fact that he would blatantly rip off, any song and just rap to it. Whereas, I had mentioned the other day, David Grohl was talking with Pharrell Williams, and I never was a big Pharrell Williams fan, but I can't deny what he did with the music industry. And he said, if you look back on, Soul Train back in the, late 70s, 80s, if you listen to a lot of the way that they started off on the drums, because we all know David Grohl started off with Nirvana as a drummer, and now he's a frontman of Foo Fighters. He said a lot of the drums I took from, these acts that were on Soul Train, and sure enough, they played them side by side, and it was just that didn't, before the guitar kicks in, and he was absolutely on point. And Pharrell Williams was like, man, I can't believe I never seen that or heard that. So yeah, you get a whole bunch of acts. The point that I'm trying to make though is, how do these people handle fame? Now, being behind the scenes is easy. You don't have to cater to a crowd. You don't have to feel obligated when somebody's like, hey, can I get an autograph? Or, hey, I'm such a huge fan, can you take a picture with me? Mind you, this was back in the days, 2000, 2001. So, the cell phones, some of them took pictures, but they were shitty. And, didn't have iPhones, didn't have news feeds, didn't have Facebook, didn't have any of that. So, the most you would get is like, can I take a picture of you, with you? With, your little wind-up yellow Kodak box that was disposable, or that you just took in to get developed, and an autograph. That was about the most that you were getting back in the days. You weren't trying to record the downfall of somebody, and what people love more than anything in any industry is seeing somebody fall. You like to see the rise of somebody. You like to give them encouragement. You like to say, hey, look at them, this and that. That's awesome that they're doing this. But I guarantee you, seeing the rise of, let's say, somebody like, I cannot possibly stand him. I really don't like him. I know he has mental health issues. But Kanye West. Only 2 songs I ever liked of his was Through the Wire. I was a huge Entourage fan. It was the series on HBO. And when they're on the plane, I thought it just fit perfectly. And I was talking about this the other night, how the film industry looks for, music editors to add these songs into their shows, into their movies, instead of paying somebody like AC/DC for a song that was made back in 75, 76, 77, somewhere around there, paying them $60 million to use, 30 seconds of it. And when he introduced Welcome to the Good Life, I was like, oh my God, that fits freaking perfect with, his whole entourage, Vinny, what the hell was their names? Eric Turtle, his brother, and Ari. They're on the plane, and, they couldn't get a trip out to Paris for the film festival. And Kanye was there, and he's like, yeah, I'll give you guys a lift, whatever. And, out comes the massage girls, she's hot stone, I'm shiatsu or whatever. And that song kicks on, Welcome to the Good Life. And I thought, man, that is just perfect. People loved seeing others rise. But I guarantee you this: when he started making his anti-Semitic, remarks, losing as much money as he did with Adidas. Now I don't talk about people's money because that's their money, that's our shit. That's it's not my business. But when he was on his downward spiral that he's been going through, people look at that twice as much as they have with his rise to where he's at. Yes, he's done some crazy shit, wearing a full black face mask. I mean, what? You have to be eccentric for one, and you have to be a complete nut on the other hand, in my opinion. Normal people don't really do shit like that, and not even celebrities who've been in the game forever. So yes, I truly believe that we love to see people getting torn down more than built up. And there's one person that really stands out. I've had my fair share of assholes that have talked shit to me. And I had shared this before, and I'm going to share it again before I start the video, but I had made what was just a simple little joke. And this fucking idiot, excuse my language, goes out and talks shit. You would think for his celebrity status that more people would have came to his aid and talked shit back to me. It didn't happen. I know that the wording that he used probably won't fly today, but I'm not gonna lie, there were words that I use. There are words that I use now, and I have a cousin, who just passed away who had cerebral palsy, and I said some of the worst shit, but that was just the era that we grew up in. Nowadays we have to watch pretty much everything we say, or else it is just blown out of proportion. But yeah, how do you deal with fame? How do you deal with people talking to you? And this is how this asshole took it. So this is just a photo from the screenshot from my Facebook page. So the 4 replies. So I got back. And this is what he calls me. He gets 3 replies back. So then I put, so Jimmy Kennedy wants to fight me. Laugh. He didn't take too kindly to a joke I told about an experience I had with a sister. Malibu's most wanted is coming after me. Now he's a pretty tall guy. He's not, stocky or anything. He's about my height, maybe 6'3", 6'4", so he's about my height. But calling on people to do his dirty work, that's bullshit. Do your thing if you're gonna talk shit. And mind you, what I said wasn't even remotely close to being fucking rude. All I said was this. I had mentioned plenty of times how one of my biggest crushes growing up was Jennifer Love Hewitt, and how there used to be a girl that worked outside of Home Depot in one of those, vendor carts, and she looked just like her, except she wore glasses, but she was absolutely gorgeous, and we ended up dating. She looked like Jennifer Love Hewitt. I happened to, just say like, man, how the hell did he, pull Jennifer Love Hewitt? I mean, he's not like the most handsome guy ever, and she's like almost everybody's crush around this time, and I know this is kind of like the time she's, and I hate to say this, I'm not trying to sound misogynistic or anything, but, just with everything else, her looks are changing and everything, and, she's not life's most, or, times the most beautiful woman in the world, or this or that, but she's still gorgeous, has such a sweet, bubbly attitude. I never got a chance to meet her, but I was just like, God, he really got her? Like, wow. They both make money. Maybe he's just a kind dude and makes her laugh. And that was basically like what I was telling his sister. And he comes out and says this shit. Not like, oh, you can never pull her, haha, or, no, man, it was this or that. No, he comes out straight up trying to attack me, talking shit. And I let it be. I'm non-confrontational. So the reply backs that you see are from his 3 fans at the time. I know he started a podcast now, and I'm not trying to bring up some shit that's, whatever. this was back in 2016. So what was that? So 7 years ago or so. Actually, it was a little bit before that because I had posted it. So it was actually about 2014. So about 9 years ago. And I was just like, this asshole. You know, is this how you handle fame? Some people are built for it, some are not. I'm on that cusp right now because, like I said, being in the music industry, I was behind the scenes. The worst I got was, hey man, can you check out my demo? You know, this shit is fly, it's this or that, you know, it's gonna change music. About 15 seconds later, that shit was in the trash. And I'm not lying, that's how a lot of places are. I don't know how scripts go, but I know I've heard the same thing about scripts, you know, first page of it's shit in the garbage, you know, somebody's life work. You know, in the music in the acting industry, I completely lucked out. I've said that before. 1,000% lucky that I got featured in 2 major feature films that are going to be due out in the next year and a half. Complete luck that I did 3 commercials, that I did a magazine shoot, that I did a student film, you know, for free. I don't know how. It was just a second dream, a backup dream, which a lot of people don't have. Has fame hit me yet? No. How am I going to react to that? The same way I did when I was in the music industry. I'm going to treat everybody the same way I did back then. You know, you're cool with me, whatever. That's fine. I'm going to stop. I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to listen to you. But if you're coming off like an asshole, I'm just going to politely say, hey man, it was nice to meet you. I have things to do. And run off. There's no need to be confrontational. There's no need, to be violent. There's no need to, belittle somebody. What's the point of that? I mean, all that's going to do is make you look like an asshole and make people think like, okay, he's hard to work with. You don't want to develop that type of repertoire in the music industry or even as acting. And, since I'm so new in my acting career, I'm curious as to how much different it's going to be now that you're front and center rather than in the background. And so with all that being said, the person that I'm going to be highlighting tonight has had a huge career, but a very, very sad downfall. I'm going to break this up in 2 parts. One, I talked a shitload, but I just wanted to set this up because I think it was important. And 2, he definitely needs the help and not the teardown. So, I'm going to go ahead and get this video started. So this video is by a not new creator, but a creator that's new to me who I just barely found. He has 613,000 subscribers, which isn't too shabby. And he documents quite a bit of the drama that goes on with a lot of YouTubers, a lot of YouTube channels, things of that nature. But when I had seen this, it really was heartbreaking to see how somebody who was respected in the comedy community, how he kind of dug his own grave. He almost seemed like that Mike Tyson type, like you never knew what he was going to do. And sure as shit, it was his downfall. Like I said, I'm going to be splitting this into 2 halves. So this is the first half. So without further ado, here is Andy Dick, Hollywood star to homeless predator.
What would you do if you became famous? Would you be able to handle it? We stave off many of our vices by the simple fact that we don't have the time and money to fuel them to their fullest extent. But what if you did? The wealth to finally satiate all of your deepest, darkest desires, whether your penchant be material possessions, food, sex, or drugs, or combinations of them. The status to get whoever you want, to do whatever you want, and on top of it all, to get away with basically everything. Would you be able to resist the temptation to give in, once the only thing stopping you is your own willpower? That might be the truest
Sorry guys, I should have did that before.
Test of someone's moral character. And from what little we know about the true workings of the celebrity industry, many fail that test. Not to be pessimistic, but most people can barely handle a follower count to the tune of triple digits. So imagine how bad it can get once there's actual celebrity status involved. Well, you don't have to imagine, because what you're about to watch is one of the most poetic and downright extensive demonstrations of that fact. A man who once collaborated with names like Chris Farley, Joe Rogan, Ben Stiller, and Marilyn Manson. He was even on long-standing adult comedy show Family Guy.
Now you can see him in the Andy Dick Show on MTV. Please welcome Andy Dick!
2 decades later, he is sitting on live streams being watched by a few dozen people who get entertainment out of watching him grope random citizens and then get arrested for it. Again and again and again.
Police told our newsroom that Dick was arrested in Santa Barbara back on October 13th.
This is the story of Andy Dick. For most of us in the internet age, Andy Dick was simply before our time. But he was a near A-list celebrity back in the 90s and early 2000s. He got his start in comedy straight out of high school, joining the highly influential comedy troupe The Second City, which has pumped out celebrity after celebrity over the course of decades, as if they were being grown in test tubes. One must wonder, however, why he's nowhere to be seen on The Second City's prestigious list of alumni. His first big break was in 1992 on the sketch comedy series The Ben Stiller Show, which met its swift end, being cancelled after a mere 13 episodes. He would continue making appearances in shows and movies until 1995, when he secured a spot on News Radio, an NBC sitcom, and also one of Joe Rogan's first breaks in television. He appeared in other sitcoms as well around that time, such as Less Than Perfect, Get Smart, and The Nanny. And he would also land plenty of film cameos and voiceover work into the early 2000s, making himself a familiar face for comedy fans at the time. As goofy as he was on the small screen, doing slapstick in sitcoms and lowbrow antics in sketch comedy shows, he was developing a greater penchant for substance abuse as his presence in the spotlight grew.
There's drunk Andy, and when drunk Andy's around, you just gotta get the fuck out of there.
Yeah.
You know, you can tell the difference.
It's two different guys.
He's very aggressive.
Yeah.
He gets like bangs in the car window, and you're like, oh no, it's drunk Andy.
Yeah.
Alcoholism seemed to be his main vice, and though surely there were people who tried to put him on the right path, he only fell deeper into the clutches of addiction. Fellow comedian and Second City member Chris Farley was his AA sponsor, or was supposed to be anyways. At some point, Chris himself relapsed into his old habits of alcohol and illicit drug abuse to the point where it was clear for all to see in 1997, when in December, he was found dead in his apartment at just 33 years old from an overdose on cocaine and morphine. We don't know for sure what impact Farley's death had on Andy, but I think it's safe to say it wasn't a positive one. This was not his only experience along these lines. In fact, around the same time, he attended a Christmas party hosted by Phil Hartman, a co-star on News Radio. Andy supplied the cocaine that caused Hartman's wife, Bryn, to relapse into her addiction after 10 years of sobriety. This relapse would culminate in tragedy. 5 months later, while high on cocaine, she murdered Phil before taking her own life.
At 6:20 this morning, residents of this upscale Encino neighborhood called police to report gunshots coming from the Hartman's gated estate. Officers arrived to find a 9-year-old boy and a 6-year-old girl by the front door. As they were taking the children out of the house, officers heard a gunshot in the master bedroom. There they discovered comedian Phil Hartman dead. Authorities say it appears his wife Bryn shot him, then turned the gun on herself.
Jon Lovitz replaced Phil Hartman on News Radio, but the show wouldn't last long following his loss. NBC ended the sitcom after the finale of the following season. Allegedly, during a taping of one of the final episodes of the show, Andy Dick told Lovitz, "You shouldn't be here," to which Lovitz replied, "Well, I wouldn't be here if you hadn't given Bryn coke in the first place." His streak of destructive behavior did not end there. As a matter of fact, it snowballed to even larger proportions, however that's possible. In 1999, when not even a year had passed since Phil Hartman's death, Andy went on a bender of partying in strip clubs and taking drugs in Las Vegas. He took with him fellow actor David Strickland, flying out together from Los Angeles on March 20th. He would, however, return alone. While intoxicated, Strickland hung himself with a bedsheet that was tied over the ceiling beam of his motel room. He died during the morning hours of March 22nd, 1999, when he was just 29 years old. Dick was questioned in the suicide and identified his body. The string of deaths related to his actions of a series of beloved actors and comedians, no less, didn't go unnoticed. He was no longer in the headlines for his talent or whatever new show or movie he was set to take part in, but instead for his controversies and reckless behavior. The negative emotions, negative attention, and possible guilt or remorse made him all the more likely to turn to drugs for an escape. A few months later, on May 15th, 1999, Andy crashed his car into a utility pole in Hollywood. Unsurprisingly, he was under the influence, possessing cocaine and cannabis in his vehicle, for which he was arrested and charged for, along with driving under the influence and committing a hit and run. He ended up pleading guilty, but got the charges against him dropped after completing an 18-month drug diversion program, which allows nonviolent offenders to receive treatment for their addiction rather than jail time. Surprisingly enough, he managed to keep his nose clean in the coming years. It looked as though the program was what he truly needed to put him on the right path. On MTV, he created 3 seasons of The Andy Dick Show between the years of 2001 and 2002. He also got his own reality show on MTV called The Assistant, where contestants would compete against each other to become his personal helper. Unlike others who had entirely succumbed to their addictions and never gotten a chance to recover because of their passing, maybe Andy's story could have something of a happy ending, where he at least partially redeemed himself and continued entertaining his fans. Though he couldn't undo the damage he may have caused, perhaps he could cease to bring any more harm to himself and those around him. At the end of 2004, those hopes were squandered. He got himself into trouble again, but this time, a very different pattern of behavior emerged. A side of Andy that hadn't ever shown its face before, at least not in the public eye. On December 4th, 2004, he was arrested for mooning people in a McDonald's and charged with indecent exposure. At the time, this probably seemed like a relatively harmless stunt in the grand scheme of things. As juvenile and ridiculous an act as a 38-year-old exposing his ass to a group of McDonald's customers is, it was a sign of the much more sinister pattern of behavior to come. Next year, in 2005, while performing at Yuck Yuck's Comedy Club, he pulled down his pants and exposed his dick to the audience. Though this incident didn't result in an arrest or any lawsuits, he was promptly removed from the stage. He was scheduled to perform a second night, but obviously, that too was cancelled. There was no slowing down though. He only pressed the accelerator on these creepy and inexplicable sexual acts. Considering that strange behavior from celebrities is basically the norm, the industry must not have thought much of these 2 incidents, because Andy Dick was invited that same year to the Comedy Central roast of Pamela Anderson. Surely he wouldn't pose a threat in a televised environment, right? Well, the irresponsibility of the show's organizers led to a groping incident live on air. During the roast, Andy pretended that he was Pamela Anderson's plastic surgeon, joking that her breasts were fake. As a part of this gag, he repeatedly groped them over the course of an entire minute.
Don't worry, she can't feel any of this. She can't feel...
People magazine wrote the following about Andy's actions. In resurfaced footage of the incident, Dick groped her breasts as he purported to show the audience how well-engineered they were. "This is all standard procedure," he said. Anderson appeared shocked by Dick's behavior, but also seemed to try and laugh it off. "Oh baby, I'm so sorry," fellow roast attendee Courtney Love could be heard saying during the clip while reaching out to hold Anderson's hand. Dick later told the audience, "Don't worry, she can't feel any of this." Correcting him, Anderson replied, "I can so." But he didn't stop there. He remained on stage and would go on to attempt to grope Courtney Love as well, but she had the nerve to slap him across the face. Good. Andy also mimed performing oral sex on Tommy Lee, who at the time was Pamela Anderson's husband.
I'm a doctor! Out of my way!
Assuming this wasn't planned in advance, considering Pamela's evident discomfort, why did nobody stop Andy as he assaulted her? Why wasn't he immediately kicked off the roast after that? It's a dark thought, but seemingly the only answer is that the producers cared more about the show going off without a hitch. Acknowledging the sexual misconduct that had just happened on live TV, with fellow cast members doing nothing to stop it, would be very uncomfortable and awkward, not to mention the fact that it could potentially make the situation worse. Pretending the whole thing was a part of the roast and moving on, however, however, could salvage it, act like nothing happened, and simply avoid another incident by not inviting Andy back. Problem solved. However, they did invite Andy back the very next year for William Shatner's roast in August 2006. Given this time, he added a new weapon of mass discomfort, actually licking people's faces. He slobbered on Farrah Fawcett, Carrie Fisher, and Patton Oswalt, and we even have footage of it. His tradition of publicly groping people also made an appearance at the event, as his next victim of the night was a female photojournalist working for the New York Post, whom he sexually harassed in a myriad of ways. According to Hollywood.com, she claimed that he groped her, tried to kiss her, then proclaimed his love for her and bit her on the hand. Later, he allegedly urinated in front of her and offered her cocaine. Somehow, even after these situations, he still had other methods of getting into hot water hidden up his sleeves. A few months later, in December 2006, while performing at the Improv Comedy Club in LA, Andy said to the audience, "You're all a bunch of N-words." Apparently, this was a callback to when Michael Richards, best known for playing Kramer in Seinfeld, used the same slur to insult hecklers 2 weeks earlier. But the context didn't make his use of the word any less offensive to the audience. He apologized with the following statement: "I chose to make a joke about a subject that is not funny, in an attempt to make light of a serious subject. I have offended a lot of people, and I am sorry for my insensitivity. I wish to apologize to Ian, to the club and its patrons, and to anyone who was hurt or offended by my remark." Apparently, all of this misbehavior still failed to dissuade shows from inviting Andy Dick on as a guest, specifically in situations when he was in a position to embarrass and even traumatize people.
Andy, don't touch Ivanka.
He was forcibly removed from a show for his conduct in February 2007, when on Jimmy Kimmel Live, he started touching Ivanka Trump's legs to her obvious discomfort. Moments later, he said to her, "Baby, give me a big fat wet sloppy kiss," at which point Kimmel and his security guards dragged him off stage, all played off as a joke, of course, to keep up appearances. The level of negligence in the industry was nigh inexplicable when it came to Andy. Although, with cases like that of Harvey Weinstein being revealed much later on, we can see how the environment of showbiz actively and regularly fostered the crimes of these perverted characters, and allowed them to get away with it scot-free over the course of years. Kimmel made a statement on what happened, saying, "Andy did a segment, he was a little out of it. When Ivanka came out, he wanted a big, wet kiss. It was time for Andy to go, so I escorted him out by his feet. He always makes me a little uncomfortable. You have no idea what he's going to do next." Andy was apparently unfazed. As Kimmel added, "He's Andy. He's not upset. He's not apologetic. He's just nutty." Andy had his own comments to make about the situation 10 years later on Instagram. "The time I groped Trump's daughter, Ivanka, on Jimmy Kimmel Live. Her legs were sparkling, and I was trying to see if the glitter would wipe off. I also mistakenly thought she would date me. I was jokingly carried off by security." He claims it wasn't a sexual thing, but he was indeed interested in dating her. On the other hand, he was a guy 16 years her senior, rubbing his hands on her legs on network television, so I'm somewhat dubious of his concern for cleaning the glitter off of her legs. In 2007, he also picked up his feud with Jon Lovitz again over Phil Hartman's death. Lovitz provided details about their confrontations, which ended up getting physical. Lovitz said he was sitting at a table with a friend, and a group at the table next to him treated them to some peach liquors. Apparently, Dick and a friend came over to their table and downed both liquors. He's standing there with liquor dripping down his chin, and he says, "I put the Phil Hartman hex on you, you're the next one to die." Lovitz wanted an apology from Dick for his Hartman's hex comment. "I just wanted him to say, 'Oh, I'm sorry,'" said Lovitz. Then he leans into me. "Well, you know why I said that? Because you said I killed Phil Hartman. That's the first thing you said to me when you got on the show." So I grabbed him by his shirt and pushed him really hard, and I smashed his back and his head into the bar. And I did it again. I would have kept going, but the doorman broke it up. At this point, it had been roughly a decade since the beginning of their altercations, but that didn't seem to mean anything to a drunk, resentful Andy Dick.
So Andy Dick's up there going, yeah, motherfuckers, and we're like, everyone's like, yo, get this motherfucker off. And so I had to wait, good night. I'm like, shit. And I run back up. Hey, Andy Dick, everybody. Ooh. And Jon Lovitz is slamming Andy Dick against the wall in the lobby.
Really?
There's a fight with Jon Lovitz going like, "You motherfucker!" trying to whoop his ass. Jon Lovitz and Phil Hartman were best buddies. And that night that she had killed him, that night, it was fucked up because Andy Dick was with her. Andy Dick, I think they were doing the drugs together.
Yeah.
Whoa! This is just one of many problems of his that just continue to rear their heads back up over his life and put him in trouble all over again. Now listen, I know watching YouTube for 14 hours a day isn't exactly conducive. That smelled a fragrance of scent. Or Brioni would colors, Dick, and Confessions of a Rebel. Her first month at Scentbird. His crimes would only escalate over time, with each year bringing a new controversy along the same lines. On July 16, 2008, Dick was arrested in Murrieta, California, on suspicion of drug possession and sexual battery. He exposed the breasts of a 17-year-old when he allegedly grabbed and pulled down her tank top.
Andy Dick, arrested again. He pulled some girl's shirt down in her bra
Again.
and exposed her.
Again.
He's gay, isn't he?
Again.
During a search of his person, police reported finding a small quantity of cannabis and one Xanax tablet for which he did not have a prescription. He was released from jail after posting $5,000 bail. Dick eventually pled guilty to misdemeanor battery and marijuana possession. He was sentenced to 3 years probation, had to pay about $700 in fine, and was ordered to wear an alcohol monitoring bracelet for 1 year. With such a serious crime under his belt, the sexual battery of a 17-year-old girl, it became clear just how nefarious his previous actions were. Before, maybe you could have chalked them up to his eccentricity and him growing up in a different time period, if you were really going out of your way to defend the man. But now it was crystal clear just what kind of person he was. Unfortunately, things only got worse from here. On January 23rd, 2010, Dick was arrested at about 4 a.m. at a bar in Huntington, West Virginia, on charges of sexual abuse after reportedly groping a bartender and a patron. He was released from jail after pleading not guilty and posting $60,000 bail. According to E! News, officers responded to a call at Rum Runners nightclub, where 2 victims, a bartender and clubgoer, as well as several witnesses, alleged that Dick engaged in unwanted and uninvited groping of 2 victims' genital areas, according to a statement from the Huntington PD. Further details about the allegations were provided by a local news station. According to the criminal complaint, a security guard at the club claims he was trying to put an armband on Dick when he became the victim of sexual abuse. The guard says Dick grabbed his crotch and began laughing. Another man says that Dick sexually abused him. The man says he was talking to Dick when, unexpectedly and without invitation, Dick grabbed his crotch and began kissing him. This was witnessed by the victim's girlfriend. As he was hollering, talking, he kissed my neck, the second accuser said. As I turned around, it was shocking. I was trying to walk away. I felt a hand go in my pants. Apparently, the charges were dismissed after he completed a pretrial diversion program involving no legal trouble or drug use for a period of 6 months. This treatment is usually reserved for people who are unlikely to reoffend, lightening the burden of court cases on the system by discarding relatively insignificant ones. However, Andy had several previous arrests for similar charges, so I'm left wondering how come that the authorities on his case were asleep at the wheel. Enough to, yet again, allow him to get away with a mere slap on the wrist after engaging in what should legally be recognized as mass groping. However, the arraignment for those charges didn't take place until July 2011, and the diversion program took place in 2012. While the case was being processed, he managed to go on a spree of misbehavior that somehow didn't manage to impress on the judge the importance of putting proper punishment on Andy.
When Andy Dick fell off the wagon, I said he has to be sober for a year before he can come over to my house. So when he got arrested, I was like, whew.
Yeah.
Just bought myself some time.
Start the clock again. Another year, Andy.
Problem is you can never trust him.
I'm so
sober. I'm so sober.
Throughout all of this, it goes without saying that Andy's work in the industry was trailing off, and he wasn't getting gigs like he used to, though it's more likely this was due to his simple inability to work due to the influence of drugs rather than any moral reservations on behalf of producers and directors, as we'll see later. 7 months after the bartender incident, on July 4th, 2010, Andy crashed a house party in Venice, California, obviously drunk. A purported eyewitness to the events that unfolded alleged the following: "I was just hanging out with friends at the party, and all of a sudden Andy Dick stumbled in. He just just plopped himself down on the couch and was clearly under the influence. At one point, he started grabbing some of the girls at the party inappropriately. Andy actually exposed himself at one point. He even tried to tell the people who owned the house to go buy him more beer. He was finally asked to leave and had to have his handlers come pick him up. The whole thing was actually very sad.
And then, you know, he came on the podcast and he barely said, he was intimating that, you know, I was mean to him when he was young. But I'm like, dude, you used to pull your dick out. You used to show up fucked up.
Yeah, you probably just always had a look on your face like, what the fuck are you doing?
It was hard to work with him.
That translates into, he's a meanie.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't stand around and laugh at all my antics.
Just a couple months later, in October 2010, he made a commotion at a Hollywood cafe by yet again flashing people. Apparently, Dick was sitting with a group of about 4 people and kissed one of the guys on the lips before whipping out his privates and fleeing the scene. Grub Street, New York Magazine's food blog, also reported on the event, adding that one of their own photographers had been purportedly groped by Andy in September 2009, though no further details are still available on the web. Sometime during 2010, which he faced a lawsuit for in 2011, Andy exposed his genitals and rubbed them against a male audience member's face during a comedy set in Dallas. Although, lucky for Andy, the patron dropped the lawsuit in 2013. In January 2011, Dick was kicked out of the Adult Video News Awards, a pornographic movie awards ceremony. This was because, yet again, he was unable to keep his hands to himself. He stalked and groped the porn star Tara Patrick several times, and he similarly victimized drag queen Chi-Chi LaRue. An hour before the ceremony at the Palms Casino Resort in Vegas, Tara Patrick and Chi-Chi LaRue were preparing in a dressing room backstage when an apparently intoxicated Dick suddenly appeared. A witness reports, "You couldn't understand what he was saying, but you could hear Chi-Chi saying, 'Leave me alone.'" Tara grabbed Chi-Chi and went into another dressing room. But boom, there he was again. This happened 3 or 4 times. He had a cup of beer, which kept spilling. Finally, this huge security guy came over, snatched the beer out of his hand and said, "That's it, we're going." A show rep, who saw security men restraining Dick against the wall, said, "I questioned one of the guards and he said Andy was being disorderly and pushing people." A rep for Dick had no comment. In April 2011, Dick attended a party associated with the Newport Beach Film Festival. A Orange County Register report detailed his behavior at said party. According to multiple eyewitnesses and a festival co-founder, Dick, 45, appeared intoxicated at a Newport Lexus gathering when, just past midnight, he unzipped his pants, exposed himself, then started rubbing against one of the tables. He entered a festival display booth, urinated on the backdrop, then pulled it down, destroying it. The damage was actually significant enough for the festival organizers to consider a lawsuit, but it seems they never followed through. The very next month, in May 2011, he was arrested for being drunk and disorderly in a restaurant. An article about this particular offense provided other details about Andy, however. In Kathy Griffin's book, Official Book Club Selection, a memoir, she talks about how crazy Andy Dick is at shows. He'll get wasted and not show up, or he'll arrive and not perform well. It was always a train wreck she claimed to enjoy watching, but was worried about. She said sometimes it ended up with him and underage males getting into his limo. He said at some universities, he would arrive just minutes before he was to hit the stage, and college student coordinators asked Griffin to stretch out her set longer to give him time to arrive.
Dick has a reputation for crude behavior. Last year, a comedy club owner in Columbus, Ohio, said Dick made inappropriate comments while on stage, groped patrons, took women into the men's room, and urinated on the floor and on at least one person. He was also cited in the city for urinating on the sidewalk.
Again, I'm not sure how it's possible that the people who were around him saw what he was doing. She wrote about it, her team of editors and publishers read it, and somehow no one thought that it might be, you know, a little too eccentric to be leaving shows with underage boys in your limousine. Instead of his usual antics of groping people and exposing himself, Andy got in trouble for quite a different reason in August 2011. Dick made some anti-Semitic jokes about Howard Stern while on a radio show, claiming that Stern was money grubbing, and he kept using the term hook-nosed to describe him. Howard was predictably displeased by Andy's tirade.
I went on, 6 fucking months ago. Fucking little hook-nosed Jew. I don't even know if he's Jewish.
I think he is.
Really? He's a hook-nosed fucking Jew.
Yeah.
Fucking Jew. Yeah, that's what it comes down to, right?
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, hate somebody for who they are.
No.
Not where, what religion they were born.
He's pretty much alienated everyone in Hollywood, and now he really has, because everyone sees.
I mean,
his
you're
true
not even
colors.
in Hollywood. He's now reaching outside.
Let's get back.
Hollywood.
Let's get back to the scary talents of Andy Dick.
Use these sound bites, because I ain't giving you any
I'm giving you the soundbite.
sweet ones anymore. You hook-nosed Jew. He's used to it. He can handle it.
He gets called that quite a bit.
Yeah, I know. I didn't.
Yeah, I get called that quite a bit, especially behind my back. You're not the first one, Andy. But I'll tell you what, I never forget.
Write it.
No.
I got it from
I
one
don't
of
think
his
you'd say
fans.
hook-nosed Irishman.
I don't care.
Yeah.
He and Beth is such a sweet girl. How does she fucking put up with that fucking hook-nosed Jew? So
How does she put up with that hook-nosed Jew? Wait till I get a hold of this motherfucker. Scumbag fuck rat.
After that, the public record about him goes silent for a few years. But sure enough, not a thing had changed. In October 2017, he was kicked off the cast of the indie movie Raising Buchanan for misconduct. According to The Hollywood Reporter, this consisted of groping people's genitals, unwanted kissing and touching, and sexual propositions of at least 4 members of the production. At first, he made light of the allegations, stating, "My middle name is misconduct. They know what they signed up for." If that troubling statement wasn't bad enough, he went on to deny the groping allegations, but made a caveat. "I might have kissed somebody on the cheek to say goodbye, and then licked them. That's my thing. I licked Carrie Fisher at a roast. It's me being funny."
But that's Andy Dick, isn't it? I mean, of all the people who have been accused of something in Hollywood, when Andy Dick gets on the list, it's like, okay.
Yeah. But you still
Has
can't.
he ever been accused of being inappropriate?
Truly, nothing is funnier than licking people's faces unrequested. This is probably the only time I've ever heard of such a thing as group sexual assault. In fact, he might have invented an entirely new kind of offense. The article goes on, "I don't grope people anymore. I don't expose myself anymore," Dick said by telephone. "I do understand that the temperature in the world right now is delicate." He claims that the temperature on set in Arizona was delicate too, and that he contributed to that by bringing up Weinstein. "Can I tell you my side of it?" Dick then asked before asserting that the filmmakers could have been upset that he was talking about, or perhaps defending Weinstein, with whom he made 2 films. "They were so incensed by what I was saying. People are so sensitive," Dick added, without elaborating on exactly what he said. "I didn't grab anybody's genitals," he continued, but he did not deny that he propositioned others. "Of course I'm going to proposition people. I'm single, depressed, lonely, and trying to get a date. They can just say no, and they probably did, and then I was done." Dick contends that part of his problem is he's 51 and unaware of what the rules are for proper behavior. "I don't know the difference between sexual harassment and trying to get a date. In the 70s, all the girlfriends I got were by kissing and licking their cheek. I don't know anymore," he said. "There were beautiful women and beautiful guys on the set. I flirt with them. I might kiss someone on the cheek and ask them to go to dinner. They are the ones that took it south." Dick ended this most recent chapter by saying that he's learned his lesson. "I won't do it anymore," he said. "I won't lick anyone's face anymore. We have an agreement." So, he made some comments about Harvey Weinstein that sounded like he was defending his actions. Then he blamed the crew members, also known as his victims, for blowing the situation out of proportion, when all he did was try to get a date. Though more and more as time passes, it seems that Andy Dick's idea of a date is actually a court appointment. But I guess it's fine because, according to him, it worked in the 70s. You know, the 70s, the good old times, when you could stick your hand in a stranger's crotch in the subway, lick his face, and a week later you'd be walking down the aisle and driving off to your honeymoon with beer cans clanking out the back of your car. I think instead of the 70s, he meant his fever dream fantasies. After all these similar controversies he had gotten into, and outright criminal charges that were brought against him, this is the event that made him realize that what he was doing was wrong. Theoretically anyway, since that same month, it came out he had been escorted off the set of another film, Vampire Dad, for multiple flagrant acts of improper conduct and inappropriate conduct with several crew members. In an interview with the producer.
So, we'll go in and stop the first half right there. If you guys are interested, I'm going to post the second one right after this. So, hope you enjoyed it, and I will be right back shortly.